The morning train whistle pierced the autumn air as Thomas Reynolds paced the Cedar Creek station platform, checking his pocket watch for the third time. 5 expectant faces watched him from the station bench, their expressions ranging from suspicious to hopeful. A woman he'd never met was arriving on the 9:45 from Springfield, a woman who had agreed, through nothing but words on paper, to become a mother to 5 children who desperately needed one. As the train rounded the bend, Thomas felt his heart hammer against his ribs. What kind of woman would agree to such an arrangement, and what kind of fool was he to hope it might actually work? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Thomas Reynolds hadn't planned on becoming a single father to 5 children before his 45th birthday. The carpentry business he'd built with his own hands was finally thriving after years of struggle. But the workshop walls couldn't contain the hollow echo that filled their home since Maria's passing 18 months ago. Winter in Vermont was approaching, and the thought of another Christmas without laughter in the old farmhouse was more than he could bear. Across the state in Springfield, Olivia Mitchell stood in front of the bathroom mirror, methodically removing the pearl hairpins from her elaborate updo. The white dress hanging on the door mocked her with its pristine elegance, a dress that would never walk down the aisle. 3 hours ago, as guests filled the church pews and the organist prepared the wedding march, Daniel's best man had delivered the handwritten note, "I can't do this. I'm sorry." The whispers had been immediate and merciless. Springfield wasn't. Large enough to hide from the story everyone was telling, how Olivia Mitchell, 32 and desperate, had been left at the altar by a man who'd finally come to his senses. Her apartment, once filled with congratulatory flowers, now felt like a museum of humiliation. It was in this state of quiet desperation that both Thomas and Olivia found themselves drawn to the same newspaper column. He to place an advertisement, she to answer one. Widower with 5 children seeks kind-hearted woman to help manage household and provide motherly guidance. Offer includes room, board, respectful treatment, and possibility of more permanent arrangement if mutually agreeable. Character references required. The Cedar Creek train station was small, a wooden structure with green trim that had stood for over a century. Thomas had arrived early, ushering his children from the old station wagon and arranging them on the bench-like stairs, from Ethan, 15 and sullen, down to Noah, 5 and unable to stop fidgeting. Sophie, 12 going on 30, had taken charge of the younger one's appearance, smoothing cowlicks and straightening collars. "What if she's mean?" Mason whispered, kicking his legs against the bench. "Then she goes right back on the train," Thomas replied firmly, though his stomach twisted at the thought. The last 3 respondents to his advertisement had all declined after learning exactly how many children needed mothering. When the Springfield train finally whistled its approach, Thomas ushered the children to stand. "Remember your manners," he reminded them, straightening his own tie and weather-worn jacket. The train doors opened and passengers began to descend. Thomas scanned the faces, looking for the woman who had described herself as of average height with brown hair and a steady disposition. Several women exited, but none approached. Then, at the last moment, a woman appeared in the doorway. Her hair was indeed brown, gathered in a simple knot at the nape of her neck. She wore a navy blue traveling dress, modest and practical, but Thomas noticed immediately that her eyes held a quiet dignity despite being rimmed with exhaustion. She carried one small suitcase and clutched a handbag like it contained her entire world. She stepped onto the platform, looked around uncertainly, and then her eyes found his. There was a moment, brief but undeniable, when something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps, though they'd never met. Or maybe just the shared understanding of 2 people who had reached the end of one path and were desperately seeking another. "Mr. Reynolds," she asked, her voice soft but clear over the dissipating steam of the train. Miss Mitchell? He stepped forward, extending his hand. Thomas Reynolds. Her handshake was firm, her skin cool against his calloused palm. Olivia Mitchell, thank you for meeting me. There was an awkward silence as they regarded each other, reality replacing whatever images they had constructed through their exchanged letters. Thomas wasn't sure what she saw in him, a weathered man with premature silver at his temples, hands permanently stained with wood stain, but he saw in her something unexpected. Not the desperate spinster he had half feared would arrive, but a woman with quiet strength in her bearing. These are my children, he said, gesturing to the line of curious faces. Ethan, Sophie, Mason, Lily, and Noah. Olivia's expression softened as she looked at each child in turn. Hello, she said simply. I'm very pleased to meet you all. Ethan nodded stiffly. Sophie offered a cautious, hello, Mom. Mason stared openly, while Lily half hid behind her older sister. Only Noah, innocent of social constraints, asked bluntly, are you going to be our new mom? Thomas felt heat rise in his face. Noah, we talked about this. But Olivia knelt down to Noah's level, meeting his eyes. I'm going to be helping your father take care of you, she said carefully. We'll get to know each other and see how things go. Would that be all right with you? Noah considered this, then nodded solemnly. I'm 5, he announced, holding up the appropriate number of fingers. That's a very fine age to be, Olivia replied, with the first genuine smile Thomas had seen from her. They loaded her modest luggage into the station wagon, the children squeezing to make room. As Thomas drove through Cedar Creek's main street, he pointed out landmarks, the general store, the small schoolhouse, the church with its white steeple. Olivia watched through the window, absorbing her new surroundings. It's a small town, Thomas said, suddenly aware of how provincial it might seem to someone from Springfield. Everyone knows everyone. It seems peaceful, she replied, and he caught something in her tone, relief perhaps at the anonymity a new town might provide. The Reynolds farmhouse stood on 3 acres at the edge of town, a 2-story white clapboard structure with a wraparound porch. Behind it stood Thomas's workshop, the source of the family's livelihood. As they approached, Thomas found himself seeing it through a stranger's eyes, the peeling paint on the north side, the porch step that needed replacing, the overgrown garden that Maria had once tended with care. It needs some work, he admitted, as he parked. I've been meaning to... It's lovely, Olivia interrupted, and something in her expression told him she meant it. Inside was another matter entirely. Thomas had done his best in the days leading up to Olivia's arrival, but the evidence of a household managed by a busy father and 5 children was everywhere. Mismatched socks draped over chairs, breakfast, dishes still in the sink, a tower of laundry waiting to be folded. I apologize for the state of things, Thomas began, but Olivia shook her head. This is why you advertised for help, Mr. Reynolds. No need to apologize for needing what you've honestly sought. He showed her to the guest room, Maria's sewing room, hastily converted. The children hovered in the hallway, watching this stranger who might become part of their lives. Olivia set her suitcase on the bed and turned to face them all. I know. This is unusual, she said, addressing the children directly. I'm not trying to replace anyone. I'm just here to help if you'll let me. The older children remained wary, but Lily stepped forward, offering a folded paper. I made this for you, she whispered. Olivia carefully unfolded it to reveal a childish drawing of the house with stick figures of varying heights standing outside. Is this your family? She asked gently. Lily nodded. That's you, she said, pointing to a figure standing slightly apart from the others. Olivia studied the drawing, touched by both the gesture and the telling detail of her separation from the family unit. Thank you, Lily. Maybe someday you can draw another picture where I'm standing closer." The little girl nodded solemnly before retreating behind Sophie again. Thomas cleared his throat. "Children, let's give Miss Mitchell some time to settle in. Sophie, could you start lunch? I need to speak with Miss Mitchell privately." As the children dispersed, Thomas gestured for Olivia to follow him onto the back porch. The October air was crisp, trees surrounding the property blazing with autumn colors. They stood side by side, looking out at the workshop where Thomas created the furniture that supported them. "I want to be direct, Miss Mitchell," Thomas said finally. "My advertisement mentioned a possibility of a more permanent arrangement." Olivia nodded, her hands clasped tightly before her. "Your letters were very clear, Mr. Reynolds. You're seeking not just household help, but potentially a mother for your children. And a wife for myself," he added quietly. "I know it's unconventional, especially in this day and age, but I believe in speaking plainly. I have 5 children who need stability and care I cannot provide alone, despite my best efforts. I'm offering you a home, respect, and partnership. Not love." The question slipped out before Olivia could stop it. Thomas turned to face her fully. "Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I loved my wife deeply, Miss Mitchell. I won't pretend otherwise, but I believe love can grow from respect and shared purpose. The question is whether you're willing to give this unusual arrangement a chance." Olivia was silent for a long moment, considering the farmhouse, the distant mountains, the 5 children inside, and the life she'd left behind in Springfield. "May I ask why me? You must have received other responses." Thomas's expression softened. "Your letters showed kindness, intelligence, and honesty. You spoke of wanting to make a difference in children's lives, and," he hesitated, "you wrote with the voice of someone who understands loss." Olivia swallowed hard. He had seen through her careful words to the truth she hadn't explicitly shared, that she too was running from pain. "You're offering marriage? Today, I'm offering the possibility," Thomas clarified. "Stay with us for the day, meet the children properly, see the town. If by evening you wish to return to Springfield, I'll drive you to the station myself. But if you see a future here, the minister is willing to perform a simple ceremony before dinner." That's... Olivia searched for words. "Rushed? Unusual? Yes to both. But winter is coming, Miss Mitchell. The children need stability before the snow flies and..." His voice lowered. "I suspect you might need a fresh start just as urgently as we need help." The perception stung with its accuracy. Daniel's rejection had been merely the final act in a series of humiliations. Springfield held nothing for her now but pitying glances and whispered gossip. Teaching positions had suddenly become unavailable. Former friends had quietly distanced themselves, as if failure might be contagious. "May I have until evening to decide?" she asked finally. Thomas nodded. "Of course. Now, shall we see what Sophie has prepared for lunch? My daughter tries, but her cooking skills are still developing." Lunch was a simple affair of sandwiches and apple slices, served at a large wooden table Thomas had crafted himself. The awkwardness was palpable, with the children stealing glances at Olivia between bites. "Miss Mitchell used to be a teacher," Thomas offered, trying to spark conversation. "What grades?" Sophie asked, the first to break the children's silence. "3rd and 4th, mostly," Olivia replied. "I especially love teaching reading and history." "I'm in 4th grade," Mason volunteered. "We're learning about explorers." "Do you know about Lewis and Clark?" Olivia asked, and suddenly Mason was animated, recounting facts from his history lessons. Olivia listened attentively, asking questions that revealed her genuine interest. As lunch progressed, each child gradually opened up, except Ethan, who maintained a protective distance. When the meal ended, He approached his father in the hallway, voice low but intense. "Dad, this is crazy. You can't marry someone you just met." Thomas placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Ethan, I understand your concern, but I need help, and your brothers and sisters need a mother figure." "We're doing fine," Ethan insisted. Thomas gave him a sad smile. "Are we? Sophie is doing the work of a grown woman. You're missing football practice to watch the little ones. Lily hasn't spoken, above a whisper, since your mother died." Ethan looked away, unable to deny the truth. "I'm not replacing your mother," Thomas said gently. "No one could, but our family needs balance again." "What do you even know about her?" Ethan challenged. "We've exchanged a dozen letters. I've checked her references, but most importantly, I trust my instincts, Ethan. There's goodness in her, I can see it." The afternoon unfolded, with Olivia gradually finding her place in the household rhythm. She helped Sophie organize the laundry, showing her an efficient folding technique. She sat with Lily, admiring her drawings. When Noah fell and scraped his knee, she cleaned and bandaged it with gentle efficiency. Thomas watched from his workshop doorway as she pushed Noah on the tire swing, her laughter mingling with his son's. For the first time in 18 months, the property felt alive again. As the afternoon light began to soften, Thomas found Olivia sitting alone on the porch steps. He settled beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "What are you thinking?" he asked quietly. Olivia took a deep breath. "I'm thinking that this morning I was a woman with no future, and now I'm considering becoming an instant mother of 5. "It's too much to ask," Thomas acknowledged. "I understand if I didn't." "Say that," Olivia interrupted gently. "Sometimes life offers the strangest second chances." She turned to face him. "I need to tell you something, Thomas, about why I left Springfield." He waited, his expression open. "I was supposed to be married 3 days ago. My fiancée left. Me at the altar, literally sent a note while I was waiting in the bridal room." The words still burned her throat. The humiliation was complete. Everyone knew. Everyone pitied me. Or worse, secretly believed I'd somehow deserved it. Thomas was quiet for a moment. "Thank you for trusting me with that. You deserve to know what kind of woman you're considering marrying. One rejected by her own fiancé." "I see it differently," Thomas said. "I see a woman brave enough to seek a new beginning, rather than live in the shadow of someone else's cruelty." Olivia felt tears threatening and blinked them back. "Your children are wonderful, Thomas. Wary, as they should be, but kind-hearted. Even Ethan, who clearly disapproves of this whole arrangement. He's protective, like his mother was." Silence fell between them, comfortable this time. "If I stay," Olivia said finally, "I want your promise that the children will never be forced. To accept me, that we'll let whatever relationships develop do so naturally." "You have my word," Thomas said. "And what of us? Would you be willing to enter a marriage with a stranger?" Olivia considered the question carefully. "Perhaps we're not complete strangers anymore. Your letters showed me a man of integrity and honesty. Today has confirmed that impression." She paused. "I can't offer you the love you had with Maria, not yet. But I can offer respect, partnership, and genuine care for your children. That's more than enough to begin with," Thomas said softly. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the yard, Olivia Mitchell made the decision that would change everything. Standing on the porch of a farmhouse that wasn't hers, surrounded by children she'd just met, she chose to believe in the possibility of a new beginning. "Yes," she said simply. "I'll stay." The Cedar Creek chapel stood small, against the darkening sky, its white steeple capturing the last golden light of day. Inside, dust motes danced in the beams of light that filtered through stained glass windows. illuminating the simple wooden pews where the Reynolds children sat in a fidgeting row. Thomas stood at the altar beside Reverend Phillips, his Sunday, suit brushed clean, his weathered hands clasped tightly before him. When the chapel door opened, all heads turned to see Olivia Mitchell step inside. She wore the same navy traveling dress from the train, now adorned with a small brooch. Sophie had shyly offered, "It was Mom's," the girl had whispered, "but I think she'd want you to have something borrowed." Olivia's hair was arranged simply with freshly picked wildflowers woven through the brown strands. In her hands, she clutched a small bouquet of autumn leaves and late-blooming asters that Lily and Noah had gathered from the yard. The walk down. The aisle was brief, the ceremony briefer still. Reverend Phillips, who had known Thomas since boyhood and had presided over Maria's funeral, kept the service simple. No mention was made of love or cherishing, only respect, partnership, and commitment to the family they would build together. Thomas's voice was steady as he repeated his vows. Olivia's trembled slightly but gained strength with each word. When Reverend Phillips pronounced them husband and wife, Thomas hesitated only a moment before placing a chaste kiss on Olivia's cheek. The children watched with expressions ranging from Ethan's guarded assessment to Noah's open curiosity. No rice was thrown, no bell was rung. Only Margaret Wilson, the town's postmistress who had served as witness, offered quiet congratulations as they signed the marriage certificate. "Well," Thomas said as they walked together down the chapel steps into the autumn evening, "that's done." Olivia nodded, feeling the gold band strange and heavy on her finger. "Yes, it is." Back at the farmhouse, now legally her home, Sophie had prepared a simple wedding dinner. The table had been cleared of its usual clutter and set with the family's best dishes, mismatched but carefully arranged. A small cake sat at the center, clearly homemade but decorated with care. "You did all this?" Olivia asked, touched by the girl's efforts. Sophie shrugged, but her eyes betrayed her hope for approval. "I thought we should mark the occasion." During the meal, conversation was sparse, but not uncomfortable. Mason recounted a story from school that made even Ethan smile reluctantly. Lily, seated beside Olivia, occasionally leaned against her arm as if testing the boundaries of this new relationship. Only Noah seemed entirely at ease, chattering about the upcoming Halloween celebrations with enthusiasm. As Thomas carved the cake, a knock at the door startled them all. Who could that be? Thomas frowned, setting down the knife. He opened the door to find James Cooper, his late wife's brother, standing on the porch with thunder in his expression. "Is it true?" James demanded without greeting. "Margaret Wilson just told me you got married today, to a complete stranger." Thomas stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind him. Through the window, Olivia could see the men engaged in intense conversation, James's gestures becoming increasingly animated while Thomas remained steady, arms crossed over his chest. "Is Uncle James mad?" Lily whispered. "He's just surprised." Olivia answered, though she could guess the true nature of the confrontation. When Thomas returned, his expression was composed but tight around the edges. "James won't be joining us for cake," he said simply, reclaiming his seat. Later, after the children had been tucked into bed, a process in which Olivia participated but carefully deferred to Thomas's established routines, they found themselves alone in the kitchen. Thomas poured 2 cups of tea and gestured for her to sit. "I should explain about James," he said quietly. "He's been involved in our lives since Maria passed. He means well." "He doesn't approve of your remarrying," Olivia guessed. Thomas's mouth quirked in a humorless smile. "He doesn't approve of my remarrying someone who isn't from Cedar Creek, someone he hasn't vetted, someone who might, in his view, take advantage of our situation." "I see." "No, you don't. Not entirely." Thomas sighed, running a hand through his hair. "James thinks he knows what's best for the children, for me. but he doesn't live with the reality of trying to run a business and raise 5 children alone. He drops by twice a month with opinions and leaves me to manage the rest." Olivia wrapped her hands around the warm teacup. "He loves them. That's something." "Yes," Thomas acknowledged. "That's something. But this household needs daily love, not bi-weekly concern." Olivia nodded, understanding more than he might realize. In the silence that followed, practical matters resurfaced. "About tonight," Thomas began awkwardly. "The sleeping arrangements." "I'm comfortable in the guest room," Olivia interjected. Quickly, relief and something like respect crossed Thomas's features. "I thought you might prefer that. This marriage is unconventional in its beginnings. There's no need to rush its development." "Thank you," Olivia said simply. Thomas met her eyes directly. "I want you to know that I meant my vows, Olivia. Whatever brought us to this point, whatever comes next, you're my wife now, and I'll honor that commitment." "As will I," she responded, and found she meant it. That night, lying in the narrow bed in what had been Maria's sewing room, Olivia stared at the ceiling and tried to comprehend the magnitude of the day's events. 24 hours ago, she had been Olivia Mitchell, abandoned bride, fleeing Springfield, in disgrace. Now she was Olivia Reynolds, wife and stepmother, with responsibilities she'd scarcely had time to consider. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by strange noises in an unfamiliar house. Shortly after midnight, she startled awake to find a small figure standing beside her bed. "Noah," she whispered, sitting up. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" "I had a bad dream," the boy mumbled, clutching a worn, stuffed rabbit. "Dad says I'm too big to come to his room anymore." Olivia hesitated only briefly before lifting the covers. "Would you like to stay here for a little while?" Noah nodded and climbed in beside her, his small body curling trustingly against hers. "You smell nice," he murmured sleepily. "Like cookies." "It's my soap," Olivia whispered back, tentatively stroking his hair. "Vanilla." "Mom smelled like flowers," Noah said matter-of-factly. "But cookies are good too." Within minutes, he was asleep again, his breathing deep and even. Olivia lay awake much longer, this small act of trust weighing more heavily on her heart than the gold band on her finger. Morning arrived with a cacophony of sounds, children's footsteps on creaking floorboards, water running through old pipes, the distant crow of a neighbor's rooster. Noah was gone from her bed, but the indentation of his small body remained. Olivia dressed quickly in a simple dress and cardigan, brushed her hair into a practical knot, and ventured downstairs. The kitchen was in controlled chaos. Thomas stood at the stove, frying eggs while Sophie buttered toast and Mason poured milk into glasses. Ethan was nowhere to be seen, but Lily sat at the table drawing, while Noah built an elaborate structure using toast crusts. "Good morning," Olivia said from the doorway. Thomas turned, spatula in hand. "Ah, you're up. Coffee? Please." She moved into the room, uncertain of her place in this well-choreographed morning routine. "Dad makes breakfast," Sophie explained, sensing her hesitation. "I make lunches. Ethan's already gone to early basketball practice." "What can I do to help?" Olivia asked. Thomas gestured toward the counter. "Lunchboxes need filling. Sophie can show you what goes where. They each have preferences." Olivia soon found herself wrapping sandwiches according to Sophie's specific instructions. Mason hates crusts. Lily only likes jelly on one side of the bread. Noah needs everything cut into triangles. Thomas watched their collaboration with approval. "You're a quick study. Teacher," she reminded him with a small smile. "Following instructions is a necessary skill." Breakfast passed in a whirlwind of requests for more eggs, reminders about homework, and the general morning flurry of 5 children preparing for school. When they had departed, Thomas driving them in the station wagon, Olivia found herself alone in the suddenly quiet house. She wandered from room to room, trying to orient herself to this place that was now her home. The living room held a comfortable but worn sofa, bookcases filled with children's stories and woodworking manuals, and framed photographs of the children at various ages. In most, a woman with auburn hair and Thomas's warm smile looked back at the camera. Maria, present in every corner of the home. The children's rooms told their own stories. Ethan's sparse and organized, with basketball trophies and history books. Sophie and Lily's shared room divided clearly between Sophie's practical neatness and Lily's artistic chaos. Mason and Noah's room, a jumble of toy cars, dinosaur figures and rumpled bedding. The master bedroom, Thomas's room, remained a mystery, behind a closed door that Olivia did not feel entitled to open. After her exploration, she returned to the kitchen and rolled up her sleeves. By the time Thomas returned from his workshop for lunch, she had scoured the sink, organized the pantry, and prepared a simple meal of soup and sandwiches. "You didn't have to do all this," he said, taking in the transformed kitchen. "I wanted to," Olivia replied. "I need to be useful." Thomas studied her for a moment. "You're not the housekeeper, Olivia. You're my wife." The words still sounded strange between them. "I know that," she said, "but I need to find my place here. Working helps me think." Thomas nodded, understanding in his eyes. Maria was the same way, always moving, always fixing. He seemed to regret the comparison immediately. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't—" "It's all right," Olivia interrupted gently. "She was your wife for 15 years. She's the children's mother. Pretending she didn't exist wouldn't help any of us." Relief crossed Thomas's features. "Thank you for understanding that." They ate lunch together, and Thomas told her about his work. Custom furniture for homes across Vermont, restoration projects for historical buildings, the occasional teaching workshop at the community college. His hands, calloused and strong, gestured expressively when he spoke of wood grain and joinery techniques. "What about you?" he asked eventually. "You mentioned teaching. Is that something you'd want to pursue here?" Olivia considered the question. "Perhaps, eventually. Cedar Creek has a school. Small but good. One teacher for each grade. I believe Mrs. Abernathy is retiring from 3rd grade after this year." The possibility of returning to a classroom someday kindled a small flame of hope in Olivia's chest. "I'd like that, I think. But for now, the children, your children, need to be my priority." "Our children," Thomas corrected gently, "at least legally speaking." Olivia nodded, acknowledging the technicality while knowing emotional reality would take much longer to align with legal status. The afternoon passed quickly as Olivia prepared for the children's return, baking cookies, reviewing the refrigerator contents for dinner possibilities, and locating the laundry hampers that appeared scattered throughout the house. When the station wagon crunched up the gravel driveway, she felt an unexpected flutter of anticipation. They burst through the door in a tumble of backpacks and lunchboxes, their voices overlapping as they recounted the day's events. Noah immediately spotted the cookies cooling on the rack. "Can I have one?" he asked, looking not at Thomas but at Olivia. "After you wash your hands," she responded automatically, then glanced at Thomas, worried she'd overstepped. He nodded. His approval and the tension in her shoulders eased slightly. As the week progressed, routines began to establish themselves. Mornings were for household tasks, laundry that seemed to multiply overnight, meals that required planning for 6, different appetites, floors that somehow accumulated dirt despite the strict no-shoes policy Thomas enforced. Afternoons were divided between helping with homework and assisting Thomas with administrative tasks for his furniture business. Filing, correspondence, and organizing the chaotic billing system he'd been managing alone. Evenings were the most challenging, the time when the absence of Maria seemed most pronounced. Bath time, bedtime stories, prayers, all had rhythms established long before Olivia's arrival. She participated where invited but was careful not to intrude, watching how Thomas smoothed Lily's hair back from her forehead in exactly the way that comforted her. How he knew without asking that Mason preferred his water cup on the left side of the bed. On her fourth night in the house, as she passed Noah's room after saying goodnight to Lily, the little boy called out to her, "Olivia, will you tell me a story?" She paused in the doorway. "What kind of story would you like?" Noah considered this seriously. "One with dragons and cookies." Olivia smiled and sat on the edge of his bed. "Once upon a time there was a small dragon who couldn't breathe fire." From the hallway, Thomas watched silently as his youngest son was captivated by his new stepmother's tale. When Olivia finally emerged from Noah's room, she found Thomas waiting, a complicated expression on his face. "He's never asked anyone but Maria or me for a bedtime story," he said quietly. Olivia felt suddenly uncertain. "I'm sorry if I—" "No," Thomas interrupted. "It's good. It's a good sign." He hesitated, then added, "You have a natural way with them." "They're wonderful children," Olivia said honestly. "You've done an amazing job, Thomas." The compliment seemed to catch him off guard. "I've done my best. It hasn't always been enough." "It has," she assured him. "They're kind, respectful, bright. That doesn't happen by accident." Thomas's smile was tired but genuine. "Thank you for that." Saturday brought a new challenge. The side chief's weekly trip to town for supplies. Thomas suggested Olivia accompany him and the children, an outing that would inevitably introduce her to more of Cedar Creek's residents. "Are you sure?" she asked, suddenly nervous at the prospect of public scrutiny. "People will talk." "People are already talking," Thomas pointed out pragmatically. "Margaret Wilson will have spread the news thoroughly by now. Better to face it directly than hide away." Olivia nodded, squaring her shoulders. "You're right." Cedar Creek's main street was modest but charming. A general store, post office, pharmacy, diner, and a few specialty shops catering to tourists, attracted by Vermont's famous autumn foliage. As the Reynolds family made their way from the parked station wagon to the general store, Olivia felt the weight of curious stares. Thomas placed a supportive hand at the small of her back. "Head up," he murmured. "You've done nothing wrong." Inside the store, the whispers were immediate but not entirely hostile. Mrs. Jenkins at the register greeted Thomas warmly before turning a curious gaze on Olivia. "So this is your new wife," she said without preamble. Margaret said she was pretty, and for once she wasn't exaggerating. "Helen," Thomas acknowledged with a nod. "This is Olivia." "Welcome to Cedar Creek, Mrs. Reynolds," Mrs. Jenkins said, eyeing Olivia appraisingly. "We were all surprised by Thomas's sudden decision, but we trust his judgment." "Thank you," Olivia replied, recognizing the statement as neither wholly welcoming nor rejecting. "It's a lovely town." As they gathered groceries, Olivia became aware of Noah's small hand slipping into hers as they navigated the aisles. Sophie stuck close to her other side, almost protectively, while Lily trailed behind, observing the interactions carefully. Mason seemed oblivious to the social undercurrents, more interested in persuading Thomas to add cookies to their cart. Only Ethan maintained his distance, browsing the magazine rack near the front of the store. The most difficult encounter came at the pharmacy, where they stopped to refill Lily's asthma medication. The pharmacist, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, leaned across the counter and spoke in a voice intended to be discreet, but carrying clearly. "Thomas, James was in yesterday. He's concerned about this hasty arrangement." Thomas's jaw tightened. "Walter, I appreciate your concern, but my family matters are my own." Of course," Walter backpedaled. Just passing along. Don't, Thomas interrupted firmly. The prescription, please. Olivia maintained her composure, but her cheeks burned with the knowledge that her marriage, her very presence, was the subject of town gossip. As they left the pharmacy, Thomas guided her toward the diner. Lunch, he said decisively. The children are hungry. The diner was busy with the Saturday lunch crowd, and their entrance caused a momentary lull in conversation before the buzz resumed, notably louder. Thomas secured a booth near the back, positioning himself on the edge as if to shield his family from curious onlookers. A waitress approached, her smile genuine as she greeted the children by name. The usual Reynolds gang? She turned to Olivia with open curiosity. And for the new Mrs. Reynolds? Just a turkey sandwich, please, Olivia requested, grateful for the woman's matter-of-fact acceptance. As they waited for their food, Ethan finally broke his silence. Everyone's staring, he muttered. This is exactly why I said this was a bad idea. Ethan, Thomas warned. No, he's right, Olivia said quietly. People are naturally curious. It's an unusual situation. Ethan's eyes widened slightly, surprised by her agreement. You don't care that they're all talking about us? About you? Olivia considered her answer carefully. I care. But I've learned recently that other people's opinions matter less than doing what you believe is right. She looked at each of the children in turn. What matters is that we know why. We're a family, even if it happened in an unconventional way. Sophie nodded slowly. Like when Mrs. Peterson adopted those twins from Russia. Everyone talked, but now no one thinks it's strange. Precisely, Olivia agreed. New things become familiar with time. Ethan wasn't fully convinced, but some of the tension left his shoulders, I guess. The arrival of their food provided a welcome distraction. As they ate, Olivia noticed small, meaningful interactions between the family members. The way Thomas automatically cut Noah's sandwich into manageable pieces. How Sophie ensured Lily took small sips of her soda to avoid triggering her asthma. Mason's habit of saving his pickle for Ethan, who collected them from all family members. These tiny rituals of family life, developed over years together, made Olivia acutely aware of her outsider status. Yet there was something beautiful in their unconscious choreography, a dance she hoped to learn the steps to, gradually and with patience. As they were finishing their meal, the diner's door opened to admit James Cooper, who stopped short when he spotted them. For a moment, he seemed to consider leaving, but then squared his shoulders and approached their table. Thomas, he greeted stiffly. Children. His gaze finally landed on Olivia. Mrs. Reynolds. Hello, Uncle James, Sophie said, her tone carefully neutral. James, Thomas acknowledged. Would you like to join us? We're just finishing up. No, thank you. I just stopped in for coffee. His eyes returned to Olivia. I understand congratulations are in order. Thank you, Olivia replied, meeting his gaze steadily. It's nice to finally meet you. The children have mentioned their uncle. Have they? James's expression softened slightly as he looked at his nieces and nephews. Well, I should let you finish your meal. Perhaps you could all come for Sunday dinner tomorrow. My invitation includes you, of course, he added, nodding to Olivia with what appeared to be significant effort. Thomas raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by the olive branch. That would be nice, James. Thank you. After James departed, Thomas turned to Olivia. You don't have to accept if you're uncomfortable. No, I think it's important, Olivia responded. He's their uncle, their connection to their mother. We shouldn't create divisions. Thomas studied her with something like admiration. That's very generous of you. It's practical, Olivia corrected, though she was pleased by his approval. Family relationships are too important to sacrifice to pride. As they left the diner and continued their errands, Olivia felt something shifting, subtly between them. A new understanding, perhaps, or the beginning of genuine respect. The stares of townspeople seemed less important now, the whispers easier to ignore. By the time they returned home, laden with groceries and supplies for the coming week, Olivia realized that somewhere between the general store and the drive, home Cedar Creek had stopped feeling like a strange town and started feeling, tentatively, like her town. That night, after the children were in bed, Thomas joined Olivia on the porch where she sat wrapped in a cardigan against the autumn chill. "You handled today well," he said, settling into the adjacent rocking chair. "Thank you," she replied. "It wasn't as difficult as I expected. The town will come around. They're good people, just protective of you and the children." "And Maria's memory," Thomas acknowledged. "She grew up here. Everyone knew her." Olivia nodded, understanding. "Tell me about her, if you want to, that is." Thomas was quiet for so long that Olivia thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but steady. She was vibrant, always moving, always planning. She could coax flowers from the poorest soil and convince the most reluctant child to try again. When she laughed, the whole room felt brighter. He paused, looking out at the darkened yard. She battled pneumonia twice before the third time took her. Even then, she was more concerned about us than herself. "She sounds remarkable," Olivia said sincerely. "She was." Thomas turned to look at her directly. "But that doesn't mean there isn't room for someone else to be remarkable in a different way." The words hung between them, an acknowledgement of possibility. "I think," Olivia said carefully, "that we might be building something good here, Thomas. Not the same as what you had before, but something worthwhile nonetheless." "I think so too," he agreed. "One day at a time." As they sat in companionable silence, watching stars appear in the clear Vermont sky, Olivia felt the first tentative roots of belonging begin to take hold. The path that had brought her here was strewn with pain and humiliation. But looking at the farmhouse behind them, lights glowing in windows where 5 children slept, she couldn't bring herself to regret a single step. Sunday dinner at James Cooper's house was an exercise in careful navigation. The modest Cape Cod-style home sat on the edge of town, its neat garden and freshly painted shutters reflecting the fastidious nature of its owner. James greeted them at the door with stiff politeness, his gaze lingering on Olivia before he ushered the family inside. The interior was meticulously clean, but oddly impersonal, as if it were a display home rather than a lived-in residence. Only one wall held photographs, mostly of the Reynolds children at various ages, and several of a younger James with Maria, their sibling resemblance unmistakable in their auburn hair and determined chins. "Children, go wash up," James instructed as they entered. "Dinner's almost ready." As the children disappeared down the hallway, an awkward silence descended on the 3 adults. "Can I help with anything?" Olivia offered. James seemed about to refuse but reconsidered. "The salad needs tossing. In the kitchen." The kitchen, unlike the rest of the house, showed signs of active use. Cookbooks with dog-eared pages, specialty olive oils lined on a shelf, a professional-grade stand mixer. "On the counter, you enjoy cooking," Olivia observed as she located the salad bowl. James nodded, checking a roast in the oven. "I find it therapeutic. Precise measurements, predictable outcomes." He glanced at her. "Unlike some of life's other endeavors." The veiled reference to her hasty marriage hung in the air, but Olivia chose not to acknowledge it. "This dressing is homemade?" she asked instead, examining the cruet of vinaigrette. "Shallots Dijon, aged balsamic." A hint of pride crept into his voice. "Maria's recipe, actually. She taught me when I moved back to town 5 years ago." Olivia tossed the salad carefully. "You were close then." "We were." James's voice softened momentarily before resuming its crisp tone, which is why I'm concerned about Thomas's decision to bring a stranger into their lives so abruptly. Rather than defend herself, Olivia asked, what was she like as a sister? The question seemed to catch James off guard. He was silent for a long moment, hands busy with carving the roast. Determined, he finally said. Even as a child. Once, Maria decided something was worth doing. Nothing could dissuade her. A reluctant smile tugged at his mouth. She decided Thomas was worth marrying when they were both 16. Their parents insisted they wait, finish school. She did, but never wavered. Olivia absorbed this glimpse into her predecessor's character. And she was a good mother. The best, James confirmed without hesitation. Those children were her world. I'm not trying to replace her, Olivia said quietly. I couldn't, even if I wanted to. James looked at her directly for the first time. Then what are you trying to do, Mrs. Reynolds? Help, she answered simply. Be whatever those children need me to be. Support Thomas in raising them. She paused, and perhaps find a place for myself in the process. James's expression remained skeptical, but something in his posture eased slightly. We'll see. Dinner itself was delicious but tense, with James directing most of his attention to the children. He knew their preferences intimately. Ethan's passion for basketball, Sophie's interest in photography, Mason's dinosaur phase, Lily's artistic talents, and Noah's current obsession with construction vehicles. He asked about school projects, sports practices, and upcoming events with the attention to detail of someone deeply invested in their lives. Midway through the meal, Noah turned to James with innocent enthusiasm. Uncle James, Olivia tells the best stories. Last night she told me about a dragon who couldn't breathe fire, but could make magic cookies instead. A shadow crossed James's face. Your mother told wonderful stories too. I remember, Noah said simply, then returned to his mashed potatoes. The moment passed, but Olivia noticed Thomas watching his brother-in-law with a mixture of exasperation and sympathy. After dessert, an apple pie that earned genuine praise even from Ethan, James suggested the children play in the yard while the adults had coffee. Once they were alone, he wasted no time addressing Thomas directly. I've been thinking about Maria's life insurance money, he began. The portion set aside for the children's education. Thomas tensed visibly. What about it? I'm concerned about its management now that you've remarried. James cast a pointed glance at Olivia. The terms of the trust are somewhat flexible. James, Thomas's voice carried a warning. That money is for the children's future. Nothing has changed in that regard. Perhaps we should consider transferring management to a neutral third party, James persisted, for everyone's peace of mind. Thomas set his coffee cup down with controlled precision. You're suggesting I can't be trusted with my own children's inheritance now that I've remarried. I'm suggesting that hasty decisions in one area might indicate hasty decisions in others, James countered. Olivia felt heat rise in her cheeks but maintained her composure. Mr. Cooper, while I understand your concern for your nieces and nephews, I can assure you I have no interest in their inheritance. I have my own savings, modest as they may be. James raised an eyebrow. Forgive me for being blunt, Mrs. Reynolds, but why exactly did you answer an advertisement from a widower with 5 children? Most women would find such a prospect daunting at best. Before Olivia could respond, Thomas cut in. That's enough, James. Olivia is my wife now. She deserves your respect, even if you're still working on acceptance. James looked as if he might argue further, but instead exhaled slowly. I only want what's best for them, Thomas. Maria would expect me to look out for them. Maria would expect you to support the family, not divide it, Thomas replied, his voice gentler now. Give Olivia a chance. That's all I'm asking. The tension eased slightly as they moved to safer topics. Town news, the approaching winter, Thomas's latest woodworking projects. When it was time to leave, James shook Thomas's hand and nodded stiffly to Olivia. To the children, however, he was openly affectionate, promising Ethan he'd attend his next basketball game and reminding Sophie he needed new photographs for his office. On the drive home, the children gradually relaxed, returning to their normal chatter. Only when they were settled in the living room, Noah and Lily playing a board game while the older three worked on homework, did Thomas approach Olivia in the kitchen. "I'm sorry about James," he said quietly. "He's protective to a fault." Olivia shook her head. "Don't apologize. He loves them. That's important." Thomas studied her face. "You handled him well. Better than I did, honestly." "It wasn't a competition," Olivia replied with a small smile. "Besides, I understand his perspective. A stranger appears and suddenly has legal authority over the children he loves. Of course he's concerned." Thomas leaned against the counter, his expression thoughtful. "You're remarkably understanding for someone who just got interrogated over dessert." "Teaching elementary school develops patience," Olivia explained, "and perspective. When you've mediated a dispute over whose turn it is to be line leader for the fifth time in one day, adult tensions seem manageable." Thomas laughed, the sound rich and surprising. Olivia realized it was the first time she'd heard him truly laugh since her arrival. The moment felt significant somehow, a small crack in the careful distance they'd maintained. "Did you mean what you said?" Thomas asked after a moment. "About having your own savings?" Olivia nodded. "I've always been careful with money, and I received a small inheritance when my aunt passed last year." She hesitated, then added, "I'm not wealthy by any means, but I'm not destitute either. I didn't marry you for financial security, Thomas." "I never thought you did," he assured her. "I just realized we've never discussed practical matters like finances. There's been so much else to navigate." "Perhaps we should," Olivia suggested, "now that the immediate adjustment period is settling." That evening, after the children were in bed, they sat at the kitchen table with cups of tea and began the pragmatic discussion of merging their lives. Thomas explained his business finances, the children's education funds, the mortgage on the property, and the household expenses. Olivia shared details of her savings, her teacher's pension, small but growing, and her practical skills in budgeting. "I'd like to contribute," she said firmly. "I know I'm not earning right now, but I have enough to help with expenses." Thomas shook his head. "That's not necessary. My business provides adequately." "I understand, but I need to feel like a contributing partner, not a dependent." Thomas considered this, then nodded slowly. "How about this? Your savings remain yours, but we establish a joint household account. You can contribute what feels comfortable, and it gives you independence as well." The compromise felt right, and as they worked through other practical matters, adding her to the health insurance, updating beneficiary information, discussing winter clothing needs for the children, Olivia felt the strange marriage gaining substance and structure. Later, as they prepared to retire to their separate rooms, Thomas paused in the hallway. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For being practical. For not expecting romantic declarations or traditional arrangements." He rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture Olivia had come to recognize as a sign of emotional discomfort. "This isn't how either of us imagined marriage would be, but you're making it work." "We're making it work," Olivia corrected gently. "Good night, Thomas." As October deepened toward November, the rhythm of the household gradually shifted to accommodate Olivia's presence. Mornings became less chaotic as she instituted a system of preparation the night before. Lunches packed, clothes laid out, backpacks ready by the door. After school hours, developed a new routine of snacks at the kitchen table while Olivia helped with homework, freeing Thomas to focus on his workshop until dinner. The children adapted at varying paces. Noah had accepted her almost immediately, his 5-year-old heart seemingly elastic enough to make room for another caregiver. Lily remained quiet but began seeking Olivia out, particularly when creating her artwork. Sophie, practical as always, appreciated the additional support with household tasks and turned increasingly to Olivia for help with school projects. Mason vacillated between enthusiastic inclusion and sudden withdrawals, as if remembering periodically that Olivia wasn't a permanent fixture. Only Ethan maintained consistent distance, polite but reserved, watching his siblings' growing attachment with wary eyes. Thomas was the greatest mystery. During the day, they operated as efficient partners in the business of running a household and raising 5 children. Evenings often found them sharing comfortable conversation over kitchen cleanup or paperwork for his business. Yet there remained an invisible boundary between them, a careful space neither seemed ready to cross. One evening, as the first snow of the season dusted the countryside, Olivia sat at the kitchen table grading papers. She had begun substituting occasionally at the Cedar Creek school, her teaching credentials proving valuable when staff members fell ill. Thomas entered from his workshop, sawdust clinging to his flannel shirt, and paused to watch her. "What?" Olivia asked, looking up to find his eyes on her. "You look at home," he said simply. The observation warmed her unexpectedly. "I'm starting to feel that way." Thomas nodded, seemingly satisfied, and moved to wash his hands at the sink. "The children like having you at the school." "Even Ethan?" Olivia asked skeptically. Thomas's mouth quirked in a half-smile. Ethan would never admit it, but yes, even him. "Sophie told me he corrected one of his friends who called you the new wife yesterday. Said you're a part of the family now." The revelation brought a lump to Olivia's throat. "That's progress. More than progress," Thomas agreed. "It's acceptance." Later that week, Olivia received a call from the school principal asking if she would consider taking over Mrs. Abernathy's 3rd grade class for 6 weeks while the older woman recovered from hip surgery. The timing was earlier than expected, but the need was immediate. "You should accept," Thomas encouraged when she discussed it with him that evening. "You miss teaching full-time. It's obvious. But the household, the children's schedules, we managed before," Thomas pointed out. "Not as well as with your help, but we survived. This is temporary and it's important." The decision was made easier by the children's unanimous support. Even Ethan shrugging and saying, "You're pretty good at explaining math." Those 3rd graders could use the help. Olivia's return to the classroom coincided with preparations for Thanksgiving. Between lesson plans and grocery lists, parent conferences and holiday decorations, November became a blur of activity. Thomas stepped up seamlessly, resuming more household responsibilities and adjusting his workshop hours to accommodate school dismissal times. One evening, arriving home exhausted after a particularly challenging day with a student in crisis, Olivia found the kitchen table set with candles, a simple dinner warming in the oven, and a vase of late-blooming chrysanthemums from a local greenhouse at her place. "The children are at James's for the evening," Thomas explained, appearing from the living room. "I thought you could use a quiet dinner." Touched by the thoughtfulness, Olivia felt tears threatening. "Thank you. It's been a day." "Want to talk about it?" Thomas asked, pouring her a glass of wine. Over dinner, she explained about 8-year-old Peter, whose parents were divorcing acrimoniously and whose behavior had escalated from disruptive to destructive that afternoon. "He threw a chair," Olivia sighed. "Not at anyone, thank goodness, just across the room, but the fear in the other children's eyes." She shook her head. "I got them out, calmed him down eventually, but it was heartbreaking. He's so angry and doesn't know how to express it." Thomas listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions about the school's resources and Olivia's approach. When she'd finished, he refilled her wine glass and said quietly, "You're good at this. Teaching, I mean. You have a natural empathy." "I love it," Olivia admitted. "Even on the hardest days. I just wish I could do more for children like Peter." "One person can make an enormous difference," Thomas said. "I still remember my fourth-grade teacher, Mr. Harrison. My father had just lost his job, and we were struggling financially. Mr. Harrison noticed I didn't have lunch some days and started forgetting his sandwich, offering it to me so I wouldn't feel like charity." He smiled at the memory. "Simple kindness, but I never forgot it." The evening continued with stories from their respective childhoods. Thomas growing up in Cedar Creek with parents who ran the local hardware store. Olivia raised by her aunt in Springfield after her parents died in a car accident when she was 10. For the first time, they shared personal histories without practical purpose, simply getting to know each other as people rather than as partners in a pragmatic arrangement. As they cleared the table together, Thomas's hand brushed against hers, as they both reached for the same plate. The brief contact sent an unexpected warmth through Olivia's arm, and she found herself stepping back slightly, uncertain how to interpret her reaction. Thomas noticed his expression, questioning. "Olivia!" "It's nothing," she assured him quickly. "Just tired, I think." He studied her face for a moment longer than necessary, then nodded. "Of course, you've been working hard." That night, lying in bed, Olivia confronted an uncomfortable realization. She was developing feelings for her husband, feelings that went beyond appreciation for his kindness or respect for his parenting skills. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. Their marriage had begun as a practical solution to mutual problems, not a romantic connection. Even now, their relationship existed primarily as a partnership in raising his children. And yet, there were moments, his laughter at something Noah said, the concentration in his eyes as he explained a woodworking technique, the gentleness with which he brushed Lily's hair from her face, that stirred something deeper than admiration. Thanksgiving arrived with a flurry of activity. Traditional expectations dictated dinner at James's house, but this year, given the changed family dynamics, Thomas had suggested hosting at the farmhouse instead, with James as an honored guest. The compromise had been accepted with surprising grace by his brother-in-law, perhaps because it allowed him to focus on cooking rather than hosting. The kitchen became command central, with Thomas managing the turkey while James prepared elaborate side dishes, their shared love of creating a good meal temporarily overriding other tensions. Olivia coordinated the children's contributions, place cards hand-drawn by Lily, a centerpiece arranged by Sophie, rolls that Mason helped knead and shape, Noah's carefully folded napkins, and even a reluctant Ethan tasked with arranging the formal dinnerware that had belonged to Thomas's mother. By the time they gathered around the extended table at 3 o'clock, the house smelled of roasted turkey, sage stuffing, and the pumpkin pies cooling on the counter. James had brought his famous maple-glazed carrots and a cranberry sauce made from local berries he'd preserved in October. The table groaned under the weight of tradition and expectation. "Who would like to say grace?" Thomas asked once they were all seated. To everyone's surprise, Ethan spoke up. "I will." As they bowed their heads, the teenager's voice was steady. "Thank you for this food and the hands that prepared it. Thank you for our family, both those here and those watching over us." He paused, then added, "And thank you for bringing Olivia to help us when we needed it." "Amen." Olivia's eyes stung with sudden tears. Across the table she caught Thomas watching her, his own expression tender. Even James looked moved, though he quickly masked it by reaching for the mashed potatoes. The meal progressed with the comfortable chaos of family gatherings, passing dishes, complimenting cooks, gentle teasing between siblings. When it came time for the tradition of sharing what they were thankful for, Noah went first, proclaiming his gratitude for dinosaurs, my new boots, and Olivia's cookie dragon stories. Lily whispered her thanks for art class and my family, while Mason enthusiastically appreciated science experiments and Uncle James's cooking. Sophie thoughtfully expressed gratitude for photographs that help us remember and new memories. We're making, a statement that brought a misty look to James's eyes. Ethan, when his turn came, simply said, basketball and home. But his glance at Olivia suggested inclusion rather than exclusion. James cleared his throat before speaking. I'm thankful for family traditions that endure even as families evolve. He raised his glass slightly toward Olivia, the closest he'd come to explicit acceptance. Thomas's turn came next. I'm thankful for second chances, he said quietly, his eyes meeting Olivia's across the table, and for hands that help carry burdens. When it came to Olivia, she found herself momentarily overwhelmed. I'm thankful for unexpected paths, she finally managed, and for 5 children who've made room in their lives for someone new. The moment was broken by Noah's enthusiastic request for pie, and the mood lightened as dessert was served. After dinner, while the children watched a football game with James, Thomas, and Olivia worked side by side in the kitchen, storing leftovers and washing dishes. Ethan surprised me today, Olivia admitted, putting away a serving platter. Thomas nodded, drying a wine glass carefully. Me too. He's been watching, evaluating. Ethan doesn't give his trust easily, but once earned, it's solid. Like his father, Olivia observed with a small smile. Thomas set down the glass and turned to face her. Olivia, Before he could continue, a crash from the living room followed by Noah's wail interrupted them. They found the youngest Reynolds standing amid the shattered remains of a crystal vase, tears streaming down his face. I just wanted to smell the flowers, he sobbed, as Thomas lifted him away from the glass shards. It's okay, buddy, Thomas soothed, checking his feet for cuts. Accidents happen. But Noah continued crying, his face pressed against Thomas's shoulder. It was Mom's special vase, he hiccuped, the one she always put the birthday flowers in. The room fell silent at the mention of Maria. Ethan's expression hardened, Sophie bit her lip, and James looked stricken. The broken vase suddenly represented far more than shattered crystal. Noah, Olivia said gently, kneeling to meet his tear-stained face, things that break can sometimes be fixed. Even when they can't, we still have our memories of them. Really? Noah sniffled. Olivia nodded. Your mom wouldn't want you to be sad about a vase. She'd want you to remember the flowers it held and the celebrations it was part of. James made a sound that might have been suppressed emotion. Olivia's... Right, he said gruffly. Maria always said objects were just things. People and memories matter more. The moment marked a subtle shift. Acknowledgement that Maria's memory could be honored not by freezing the family in grief, but by carrying forward her values and wisdom. As James helped clean up the broken crystal, his interaction with Olivia held new respect, a tentative alliance in service of the children they both cared for. That night, after James had gone home with leftovers and promises to return for Sunday dinner the following week, the children prepared for bed with the contented exhaustion that follows holiday celebrations. Thomas found Olivia in the kitchen, making a final check before turning off the lights. Thank you, he said, leaning against the doorframe, for today, for how you handled the vase incident. Olivia smiled tiredly. Noah has a tender heart. Breaking something connected to his mother was bound to trigger big feelings. Thomas nodded, then seemed to make a decision. He crossed the kitchen and, before Olivia could register his intent, gently took her hand in his. What I was trying to say earlier, before we were interrupted, I'm grateful for you, Olivia, not just for what you do for the children, but for who you are. The simple declaration, combined with the warmth of his hand around hers, made Olivia's heart beat faster. Thomas, he shook his head. You don't need to say anything. I just wanted you to know that this arrangement, this marriage, it's become more than a practical solution for me. I'm not pushing for anything. I just thought you should know where I stand. Before she could respond, he released her hand and stepped back. Good night, Olivia. As he left the kitchen, Olivia remained still, her hands still warm from his touch, her mind spinning with implications. The pragmatic marriage they had entered into 2 months ago was evolving into something neither had anticipated. Something with the potential for genuine connection, perhaps even love. The realization was both thrilling and frightening. Somewhere between autumn and early winter, between practical partnership and genuine care, Olivia had found herself belonging to this family in ways that transcended legal arrangements. The question now was whether she was brave enough to acknowledge those feelings to Thomas and, more importantly, to herself. December arrived with a vengeance, burying Cedar Creek under 18 inches of snow in a single night. Olivia woke to a transformed world. The landscape outside her window, a pristine expanse of white, broken only by the dark silhouettes of pine trees. The farmhouse creaked and settled under its snowy blanket, the old radiators clanking as they struggled against the cold. She had just finished dressing when Noah burst into her room, still in pajamas, his face alight with excitement. "Snow day!" he announced breathlessly. "School's cancelled! Dad said we can go sledding after breakfast!" His enthusiasm was infectious, and Olivia found herself smiling as she followed him downstairs. In the kitchen, Thomas stood at the stove making pancakes, his expression more relaxed than usual. The children's excitement about the unexpected holiday had temporarily suspended the normal morning rush. "Good morning," he greeted her, spatula in hand. "Coffee's fresh." Since Thanksgiving, a new warmth had developed between them. Nothing overt, but small gestures that acknowledged his declaration in the kitchen. Thomas now casually touched her shoulder when passing by, sought her opinion on matters beyond household management, and occasionally let his gaze linger on her face when he thought she wasn't looking. Olivia had not yet found the courage to reciprocate verbally, uncertain how to navigate this evolution of their arrangement. But she had begun responding in her own ways, brewing his preferred tea without being asked, leaving woodworking articles she thought might interest him beside his chair, laughing more freely at his dry observations. "The plows won't get to our road until afternoon at the earliest," Thomas explained as he flipped pancakes. "Thought we'd make the most of it. There's a perfect sledding hill behind the workshop." "I've never been sledding," Olivia admitted, accepting the coffee mug he offered. 5 astonished faces turned toward her. "Never?" Mason gasped, as if she'd confessed to never having breathed oxygen. Olivia shook her head. "I grew up in an apartment building in Springfield, not much opportunity." "Then you absolutely have to try it today," Sophie declared with authority. "Everyone needs to sled at least once." After breakfast, the entire household bundled up in layers of wool and waterproof outerwear. Thomas pulled old sleds from the barn, traditional wooden toboggans with curved fronts, circular saucers of molded plastic, and a mysterious contraption he called the rocket that appeared to be a modified cafeteria tray with handles. Maria's favorite, he explained quietly when he caught Olivia examining it. She was fearless on this thing, could outrace anyone down the hill. There was no sadness in his voice, only fond remembrance. Olivia had noticed this gradual shift, Maria's memory becoming something that could be shared joyfully rather than avoided painfully. The hill behind the workshop sloped gently at first, then dropped more steeply toward a flat field below. The children immediately began claiming sleds and racing toward the top, leaving trails of footprints in the pristine snow. "Ready for your First sledding experience? Thomas asked, offering Olivia a traditional toboggan. I think I'll watch the first few runs, she hedged, uncertain about hurling herself down an icy slope. Thomas smiled, seeing through her hesitation. How about we go together? Double the weight, half the chance of tipping over. The offer was tempting, both for the security and for the proximity it would require. All right, Olivia agreed. But if I break something, you're handling my third graders until I recover. Deal, Thomas laughed. They trudged up the hill together, watching as the children demonstrated various techniques. Ethan was methodical, positioning his sled for maximum speed. Sophie sought the smoothest path. Mason deliberately aimed for bumps that would send him airborne. Lily clung to her saucer with determined concentration, while Noah simply hurled himself downhill with abandoned glee. At the summit, Thomas positioned the toboggan and gestured for Olivia to sit at the front. I'll steer from behind, he explained, settling himself behind her, his legs extending alongside hers, his chest warm against her back. Just hold onto the rope and lean into the curves. Before she could reconsider, he pushed off with his hands, and they were moving, gathering speed as they cleared the gentle upper slope and hit the steeper incline. The world became a blur of white, the wind stinging Olivia's cheeks, her stomach dropping as they accelerated. Behind her, Thomas guided their descent with subtle shifts of weight, his body solid and reassuring against hers. Olivia found herself laughing, a spontaneous, joyful sound that burst from her as they sped toward the bottom. The toboggan finally slowed on the flat field, coming to rest near a clump of snow-laden bushes. Well, Thomas asked, his breath warm against her ear. Verdict on sledding? Olivia turned her head to answer and suddenly realized how close his face was to hers. Close, enough to see the light dusting of freckles across his nose, the tiny lines at the corners of his eyes, the exact shade of brown in his irises. For a moment neither moved, caught in an unexpected intimacy. Again, she finally said, her voice slightly breathless. Let's go again. The rest of the morning passed in exhilarating runs down the hill, snowball fights between descents, and attempts to build increasingly elaborate snow forts. By noon, everyone was soaked, exhausted, and ravenously hungry. They trooped back to the house where Olivia prepared hot chocolate with miniature marshmallows, while Thomas made grilled cheese sandwiches. The children sprawled in the living room. With their lunch, their cheeks flushed from cold and exertion, swapping stories of their most dramatic sledding moments. Thomas and Olivia remained in the kitchen, enjoying a rare moment of adult quiet. Thank you, Olivia said, warming her hands around her mug, for making sure I didn't miss out on the sledding experience. Thomas smiled, leaning against the counter. Everyone deserves to fly down a hill at least once in their life, though I have to say, your scream on that last run could have wakened the entire town. That was because someone, she pointed an accusing finger at him, deliberately steered us through that snowdrift. Tactical decision, Thomas defended, eyes twinkling. It was either that or collide with Mason. Their laughter mingled easily, comfortable in a way that still surprised Olivia. This man who had begun as a stranger, become her husband through practical arrangement, was now. What exactly? Friend, certainly. Co-parent, definitely. But there was something else developing, something neither had planned for. The rest of the snow day passed in domestic contentment. As darkness fell early, as it does in northern winters, they gathered in the living room. Sophie and Lily worked on handmade Christmas decorations. Mason and Noah built elaborate structures with wooden blocks, while Ethan sprawled in an armchair with a dog-eared copy of The Old Man and the Sea. Thomas sat at his small desk in the corner, sketching designs for a commission, a rocking cradle for a couple expecting their first child in spring. Olivia curled in the worn armchair by the fireplace, grading papers from her class, occasionally looking up to answer a question or admire a child's creation. The scene was utterly ordinary, and yet, to Olivia, miraculous in its normalcy. 3 months ago, she had been abandoned at the altar, humiliated and adrift. Now she sat in a warm farmhouse that was gradually becoming home, surrounded by children who increasingly treated her as a permanent fixture in their lives, with a husband whose quiet strength and integrity she admired more each day. She caught Thomas watching her from his desk, his expression thoughtful. When their eyes met, he didn't look away but offered a small smile, acknowledging the moment of connection. That night, after the children were asleep, Olivia was preparing for bed when a soft knock sounded at her door. She opened it to find Thomas standing in the hallway holding a small wooden box. "May I come in for a moment?" he asked, his voice hushed to avoid waking the children. Olivia nodded, suddenly aware of her flannel nightgown and the single bedside lamp casting soft shadows across the room. Thomas entered, but remained standing near the door, respecting the intimacy of the space. "I've been thinking," he began, turning the box in his hands, "about Christmas. We should discuss gifts for the children," Olivia agreed, assuming a practical purpose for his visit. "Yes, that too, but I was actually thinking about you." He extended the box toward her. "This isn't a Christmas gift exactly, more of an overdue acknowledgement." Curious, Olivia accepted the box and opened it carefully. Inside, nestled on a bed of cotton, lay a ring, a delicate band of polished wood inlaid with a small, modest diamond. "Thomas," she breathed, looking up at him in surprise. "When we married," he explained, "it was a practical decision. There was no courtship, no romantic gesture, just a simple band to make it legal." He gestured to the wooden ring. "I made this. The wood is cherry, from a tree that used to stand where the workshop is now. The diamond was my grandmother's." Olivia touched the ring gently, feeling the smooth grain of the wood under her fingertip. "You don't have to wear it," Thomas added quickly. "I know our arrangement began as convenience, but it's become more to me. If it hasn't for you, I understand completely." Olivia looked from the ring to Thomas's face, seeing vulnerability in his eyes that he rarely allowed to show. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "And yes, things have changed for me too." She lifted the ring from its bed of cotton and held it out to him, extending her left hand. Understanding her gesture, Thomas carefully removed the plain gold band she'd worn since their wedding day and replaced it with the wooden ring. It fit perfectly, the polished wood warm against her skin. "I'm not very good at expressing feelings," Thomas admitted, his voice low. "But I want you to know that I'm grateful every day that you answered that advertisement. Not just for what you've done for the children, but for who you are, your kindness, your patience, your strength." Olivia felt tears threatening, overwhelmed by the simple honesty of his words. "Thomas, He shook his head gently. "You don't need to say anything now. I just wanted you to have something that was made especially for you, not just a practical symbol." Before she could respond, he leaned forward and placed a soft kiss on her forehead. "Good night, Olivia." As he turned to leave, Olivia found her voice. "Thomas, wait." He paused, hand on the doorknob. "I came to Cedar Creek running away from humiliation, looking for any safe harbor," she said quietly. "I never expected to find a home or a family or—" She hesitated, then continued with determination, "or feelings for a man I married before I knew him." Thomas turned back, hope cautious in his eyes. "And now I find myself falling in love with my husband," Olivia admitted, the words both frightening and freeing, "which is rather unconventional timing." A smile spread slowly across Thomas's face, transforming his usually serious expression. I believe we left conventional behind at the train station. He stepped toward her, closing the distance between them. This time, when he bent his head, his lips found hers in a gentle kiss, tentative at first, then deepening as Olivia responded, her hand coming up to rest against his chest. When they finally parted, Thomas rested his forehead against hers. "I should go," he whispered reluctantly. "The children—" "I know," Olivia agreed, equally reluctant. "This is still new. We should take time." Thomas nodded, pressing one more quick kiss to her lips before stepping back. "But not too much time," he added with a smile that sent warmth through Olivia's entire body. After he left, Olivia sat on the edge of her bed, looking at the wooden ring on her finger. What had begun as an escape, a practical solution for both of them, had somehow transformed into something genuine and precious. The timing might be unconventional, falling in love with a man after marrying him, but perhaps that was exactly what made it right for them. A relationship built on practical foundation first, with romance blooming from respect and shared purpose rather than leading the way. The week before Christmas brought a flurry of activity to the Reynolds household. School finished for the winter break, giving Olivia more time to help with holiday preparations. The children were bubbling with excitement, particularly Noah, who checked the Christmas tree each morning to see if Santa had made an early delivery. One afternoon, while Thomas took the older children to select a wreath for the front door, Olivia and Lily remained at home, baking Christmas cookies. The kitchen was warm with the scent of vanilla and cinnamon, Christmas carols playing softly from the radio on the windowsill. "Can I do the sprinkles?" Lily asked, her normally quiet voice animated with holiday spirit. "Absolutely," Olivia agreed, sliding a tray of star-shaped cookies toward her. "Just remember what happened when Noah did the sprinkles last year." Lily giggled, a delightful sound that had become more frequent recently. "Dad said he was finding sprinkles in his socks until Valentine's Day." As they worked side by side, Lily decorating while Olivia rolled out more dough, the young girl grew contemplative. "Olivia," she asked, carefully placing red sugar on a cookie, "are you and Dad going to have a baby?" The question caught Olivia completely off guard. She set down her rolling pin and turned to face Lily directly. "What makes you ask that?" Lily shrugged, focusing intently on her decorating. "Melissa at school said when her dad got remarried, they had a new baby right away. And now her mom is sad because the new baby gets more attention." Understanding dawned. This wasn't idle curiosity, but concern about her place in the family. "Lily, look at me, sweetheart," Olivia said gently. The girl raised her eyes, vulnerability evident in their depths. "Your dad and I haven't discussed having children," Olivia said honestly. "If we ever did, it wouldn't change how much we love you and your brothers and sister. You wouldn't be replaced or forgotten." "Promise," Lily whispered. "I promise," Olivia assured her, then hesitated before adding, "Can I tell you a secret?" Lily nodded solemnly. "When I first came here, I was scared you wouldn't like me, that I wouldn't know how to be part of your family," Olivia confessed. "But you gave me a chance, even though it was hard. That made you very brave." "I wasn't brave," Lily protested. "I was scared too." "Being brave doesn't mean not being scared," Olivia explained. "It means doing something even though you're scared. Like you did with me." Lily considered this, then smiled shyly. "Like you did coming here on the train." "Exactly like that," Olivia agreed, impressed by the girl's perception. Lily returned to her cookie decorating, but after a moment asked, "If you and Dad did have a baby someday, could I help take care of it?" The question squeezed Olivia's heart with unexpected emotion. "You would be the very best helper," she assured Lily. "But that's a conversation for another day, a long time from now." When Thomas and the other children returned, rosy-cheeked. From the cold, they found Olivia and Lily surrounded by decorated cookies and covered in flour, laughing together like they'd been doing it all their lives. That evening, after the children were in bed, Olivia related her conversation with Lily to Thomas as they wrapped presents at the kitchen table. "She's perceptive," Thomas said, somewhat awkwardly folding wrapping paper around a basketball for Ethan. "She notices more than she says." "She was worried about being replaced," Olivia explained, deftly securing a ribbon around a watercolor set for Lily. "I assured her that wasn't going to happen." Thomas set down the scissors he was using and looked at Olivia directly. "We haven't discussed children," he said carefully. "Our own children, I mean." Olivia felt her cheeks warm. "No, we haven't." "Is that something you would want, eventually?" Thomas's question was tentative, exploring unfamiliar territory. Olivia considered her answer carefully. "I've always wanted children of my own," she admitted. "But I also consider myself incredibly fortunate to be a part of your children's lives. If that's all the family we have, it would be more than enough." Thomas nodded, absorbing her words. "I never expected to have more children after Noah. When Maria died, I could barely manage the 5 we had." He paused, then added softly, "But with you, I could imagine it." The simple statement hung between them, full of possibility. Neither pushed further, both aware that their relationship was still evolving, finding its footing in the transition from practical arrangement to genuine partnership. Christmas Eve arrived with gentle snowfall that transformed Cedar Creek into a scene from a storybook. The Reynolds farmhouse glowed with warm light, a fresh pine tree decorated with handmade ornaments and multicolored lights standing proudly in the living room window. After the children had hung their stockings and left cookies for Santa, with Noah insisting on adding carrots for the reindeer, Thomas read The Night Before Christmas, while they all crowded onto the sofa in their new Christmas pajamas, a tradition Olivia had suggested continuing from her own childhood. Once the children were finally asleep, Thomas and Olivia worked together to fill stockings and arrange presents beneath the tree. The task complete, they stood together in the dimly lit living room, the tree lights casting a multicolored glow across their faces. "First Christmas as a family," Thomas observed, his arm slipping naturally around Olivia's waist. "It's perfect," she replied, leaning against him, "though I'm slightly terrified of the morning chaos I've been warned about." Thomas laughed softly. "The Reynolds Christmas morning tornado is legendary. We should get some sleep while we can." Neither moved immediately, both savoring the peaceful moment before the joyful storm of the morning. Finally, Thomas turned Olivia to face him, his expression serious despite his smile. "I have one more gift for you," he said, "but I wanted to give it to you privately." From his pocket, he withdrew a small envelope and handed it to her. Inside, Olivia found a key attached to a wooden keychain carved in the shape of a small house. "What's this for?" she asked, running her finger over the detailed carving. "The workshop," Thomas explained. "I've cleared a space in the back. I thought you might like a place of your own for reading, grading papers, or just having quiet time. The children know it's off limits, unless invited." Touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift, Olivia felt tears welling. "Thomas, thank you. You have no idea what that means to me." He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch gentle. "I think I do. Everyone needs somewhere that's just theirs, especially in a house with 5 children and a husband." The word husband no longer felt formal or awkward between them, but natural, right? Olivia reached up and traced the line of his jaw with her fingertips. "Best Christmas gift ever," she whispered, "except maybe for the one at the train station." Thomas's eyes softened at her words. "Olivia Reynolds," he said quietly, "I love you, not because you're good with the children or because you make this house run smoothly, but because you're you, brave enough to start over, kind enough to love children who weren't yours, patient enough to let me find my way to you at my own pace." "I love you too," Olivia replied, the words simple but profound. "All of you, the dedicated father, the gifted craftsman, the man who took a chance on a stranger at a train station." Their kiss deepened, no longer tentative but certain, a promise and a celebration wrapped together. When they finally separated, breathless, Thomas rested his forehead against hers. "We should probably—" He gestured vaguely toward the stairs. "Probably," Olivia agreed reluctantly. He hesitated, then said in a low voice, "Or you could come to my room. Not for— just to sleep. To be together." The invitation was significant. The master bedroom had remained Thomas's private space, the one room Olivia had never entered. Moving into that space, even just to sleep beside him, represented another boundary crossed, another step toward true partnership. "I'd like that," she said softly. That night, curled against Thomas's solid warmth in what had once been his and Maria's bed, but now felt like theirs, Olivia reflected on the strange, winding path that had led her here. Daniel's cruel abandonment, once the greatest humiliation of her life, now seemed like a gift, closing one door so she could find another that led to exactly where she was meant to be. Christmas morning exploded with exactly the chaos Thomas had predicted. Children thundering down the stairs at an hour Olivia previously didn't believe existed on holidays, wrapping paper flying in all directions, exclamations of delight echoing through the house. Noah received the fire truck he'd been coveting for months. Lily clutched her new watercolor set as if it were made of gold. Mason immediately began assembling the dinosaur model kit from Santa. Sophie was already thumbing through her new photography book, and even Ethan seemed genuinely pleased with his basketball and history books. When the initial frenzy subsided slightly, Sophie approached Olivia with a carefully wrapped package. "This is from all of us," she explained, the other children gathering around expectantly. Inside, Olivia found a handmade scrapbook. The cover, decorated in Lily's distinctive artistic style, read "Our Family" in careful lettering. Opening it, she found photographs and mementos from the past 3 months. Her first day at the farmhouse, Halloween costumes, Thanksgiving dinner, sledding adventures, everyday moments captured in snapshots and children's drawings. "Sophie took the pictures," Mason explained. "I wrote some of the captions. Lily did the drawings. Ethan helped me with the binding," Sophie added, "and Noah picked which pictures to use." "Do you like it?" Noah asked anxiously. "Dad said you would, but we weren't sure." Olivia looked up at their expectant faces, her heart so full it might burst. "It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received," she said truthfully, opening her arms. The younger children immediately crowded in for a group hug, while Ethan hung back until Olivia extended a hand specifically to him. With only slight hesitation, he stepped forward and allowed himself to be included in the embrace. Over their heads, Olivia met Thomas's eyes. He was watching them with an expression of such naked love and gratitude that it took her breath away. In that moment, surrounded by children who had gradually become hers, looking at the man who had started as a stranger and become her heart's home, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that sometimes the most unexpected journeys led to the most perfect destinations. The rejected bride had not just found a family at that small-town train station. She had found herself, her purpose, and a love that had waited patiently to be discovered in the most unlikely of arrangements. Spring arrived in Cedar Creek with a gentleness that belied the harsh winter preceding it. The snow retreated gradually, revealing muddy earth that promised green in the coming weeks. The maple trees behind the Reynolds farmhouse dripped with sap that Thomas and the children collected in metal buckets. a Vermont tradition that Olivia embraced with enthusiasm despite the cold fingers and early mornings it required. "I can't believe people actually do this for fun," she laughed one morning, her breath visible in the chilly air as she helped Thomas empty the overflowing buckets into larger containers. "Wait until you taste our homemade maple syrup on fresh pancakes," Thomas replied, his expression warm despite the lingering cold. "You'll understand why generations of Vermonters have braved frostbite for this liquid gold." Olivia had moved into the master bedroom shortly after Christmas, a transition met with acceptance from the children. Noah had simply asked if this meant Olivia would be closer when he had nightmares, while Sophie had helped rearrange the closet to make space for Olivia's clothes. Even Ethan had acknowledged the change, with nothing more than a raised eyebrow and a muttered, "About time," that both amused and touched his father. The transformation of their practical arrangement into a genuine marriage had been gradual but profound. Thomas, initially reserved and cautious, had blossomed in the security of Olivia's love, revealing a playful side that delighted both her and the children. Olivia, who had arrived at Cedar Creek train station broken by rejection, had found not only healing, but joy in the family that had claimed her as their own. As March gave way to April, changes swept through the Reynolds household. Thomas's furniture business was thriving, with commissions now extending beyond Vermont's borders. Olivia had been officially offered a permanent teaching position at Cedar Creek Elementary for the following school year. The children were flourishing. Ethan had been named captain of his basketball team. Sophie was developing her photography skills with a second-hand camera Thomas had refurbished. Mason had won the school science fair with a project on woodworking techniques. Lily was coming out of her shell through art classes, and Noah had finally learned to tie his shoes without assistance. One Wednesday afternoon, as Olivia walked home from school enjoying the first truly warm day of spring, she spotted an unfamiliar car parked in front of the farmhouse. Her steps slowed as she approached, recognizing neither the sleek sedan nor the well-dressed man standing on the porch speaking with Thomas. Drawing closer, she caught the tension in Thomas's posture, the stiffness in his shoulders that appeared only when he was deeply uncomfortable. The stranger gestured emphatically, his back to Olivia, as she approached the yard. When the gravel crunched beneath her feet, both men turned. "Olivia," Thomas said, relief evident in his voice. "You're home early." "Teacher conference finished. Sooner than expected," she explained, climbing the porch steps to stand beside her husband, sensing instinctively that her presence was needed. "Hello," she added, extending her hand to the stranger. "Daniel," the man responded, taking her hand. Briefly. "Daniel Parker." The name struck Olivia like a physical blow. Daniel Parker, the man who had left her waiting at the church, humiliated and abandoned on what should have been their wedding day. He looked exactly as she remembered, handsome in a conventional way, his expensive suit and carefully styled, hair projecting the same polished image that had once impressed her. "I see you remember me," Daniel observed, noting her reaction. "I wasn't sure you would, given how quickly you moved on." The implication in his tone ignited a spark of anger in Olivia's chest. "What are you doing here, Daniel?" Thomas's hand found hers, a silent gesture of support. "Mr. Parker was just explaining that," he said, his voice deceptively calm. "Apparently, he's had a change of heart." Daniel straightened his already immaculate tie. "I made a mistake, Olivia. I panicked. After some time to reflect, I realized what I'd thrown away." He gestured vaguely toward the modest farmhouse behind them. "I came to bring you back to Springfield, to make things right." The absurdity of his statement might have been laughable if it weren't so breathtakingly arrogant. Olivia stared at him, searching for any trace of the man she'd once believed she loved. All she saw was vanity wrapped in expensive clothing. "Make things right," she repeated, incredulity evident in her voice. "I've spoken with Reverend Matthews," Daniel continued, as if her tone hadn't registered. "He's willing to officiate a small ceremony. Nothing elaborate, given the circumstances. My mother has arranged for the country club to host a modest reception." Thomas's hand tightened around Olivia's, but he remained silent, allowing her to respond on her own terms. "The circumstances," Olivia echoed flatly. "You mean the circumstance where you abandoned me on our wedding day with nothing but a hastily scrawled note, or the circumstance where I'm now happily married to someone else?" Daniel had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. "I understand you're angry. You have every right to be. But this," he gestured at the farmhouse, the muddy yard, Thomas's work clothes. "This can't possibly be what you want, Olivia. You were meant for better things than being a replacement mother in some backwoods town." Thomas stiffened beside her, but before he could speak, the front door burst open and the children spilled onto the porch, drawn by the unfamiliar voice. "Mom, can we have cookies?" Noah asked, tugging at Olivia's hand without hesitation. "Sophie says we need your permission." Daniel's eyes widened at the boy's casual use of mom, his gaze traveling over the 5 children now clustered around. Olivia and Thomas. "In a few minutes, Noah," Olivia replied gently. "We're speaking with an old acquaintance." Ethan, perceptive as always, assessed the tension and the stranger with narrowed eyes. "Everything okay, Dad? Mom?" The second mom seemed to finalize something for Daniel, his expression shifting from confidence to comprehension. "I see," he said stiffly. "You've created quite the arrangement for yourself." "She's created a family," Thomas corrected, his voice level but firm. "And in case there was any confusion, Mr. Parker, my wife won't be returning to Springfield with you." Daniel's focus returned to Olivia, searching her face for any sign of hesitation or regret. "Is this really what you want, Olivia? To trade everything we planned for this?" Olivia looked at the children gathered around her. Ethan, protective, Sophie curious, Mason confused, Lily apprehensive, and Noah simply trusting. She felt Thomas beside her, solid and certain. The life she had built here wasn't what she had planned, but it was infinitely more genuine than anything she'd dreamed of in Springfield. "What I want," she said clearly, "is exactly what I have. A husband who respects me, children who accept me, and a life with purpose and love." She stepped forward slightly. "You did me a favor that day, Daniel. You freed me to find something real." The finality in her tone was unmistakable. Daniel's facade cracked briefly, revealing not heartbreak, but wounded pride. "Well," he said, adjusting his cuffs unnecessarily, "I suppose I've wasted my time." "Not entirely," Olivia replied, finding compassion beneath her anger. "Maybe now we can both move forward knowing that what happened was for the best." Daniel nodded stiffly, turning to leave without another word. As his car disappeared down the driveway, Olivia felt a sudden lightness, as if the last tether to her former life had finally been severed. "Who was that man?" Mason asked, breaking the silence. Thomas looked to Olivia, allowing her to decide how much to share. "Someone I used to know," she answered truthfully. "Someone who helped me find my way here, though he didn't mean to." The Bush explanation satisfied the younger children, who quickly returned to their original mission of obtaining cookies. Ethan lingered, his gaze knowing. "That was him, wasn't it?" he asked quietly. "The one who left you at the altar?" Olivia nodded, unsurprised by his perception. "Yes. Good thing he did," Ethan said with the directness of a teenager. "Otherwise, you wouldn't be our mom." With that simple statement, he followed his siblings inside, leaving Olivia momentarily stunned by the casual acceptance of her place in his life. "That's Ethan's way of saying he loves you," Thomas said softly, pulling her into his arms once they were alone on the porch. "Not the most eloquent, but sincere." Olivia leaned into his embrace, feeling the last of the tension drain from her body. "I almost feel sorry for Daniel," she admitted. "He came expecting to find me miserable and desperate, waiting to be rescued. Instead, he found a woman who doesn't need rescuing at all," Thomas observed, pride evident in his voice. "You handled that with remarkable grace." "I had good reason to," Olivia replied, looking toward the house where the sounds of children's voices created a backdrop of chaotic harmony. "Everything I said was true, Thomas. This is exactly where I want to be." That evening, after dinner, and homework, and the nightly ritual of bedtime stories, Thomas and Olivia sat together on the porch swing, watching stars appear in the clearing sky. The encounter with Daniel had faded to a strange footnote in a day otherwise filled with ordinary family moments. "I've been thinking," Thomas said, his arm around Olivia's shoulders, "about what you told Daniel, that I respect you." "You do," Olivia confirmed. "It's one of the things I love most about you." Thomas nodded thoughtfully. "I hope so. But I realize today that I've never properly asked you something important." He shifted to face her more directly. "When you came here, you put your teaching career on hold to help with the children. Now that you've been offered the permanent position at the school, I want to make sure that's still what you want." The question touched Olivia deeply, evidence of the very respect she had mentioned. "It is," she assured him. "I love teaching, and having my own classroom again will be wonderful, but I also love being here, being part of this family. The timing feels right." Thomas seemed relieved. "I just wanted to be certain I wasn't taking your career for granted." "You never have," Olivia said truthfully. "From the beginning, you've treated me as a partner, not a convenience." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the swing creaking gently as Thomas pushed it with his foot. "There's something else," he said finally, his voice taking on a hint of nervousness. "Something I've been wanting to discuss with you." Olivia looked at him curiously, unused to hearing uncertainty in his tone. "What is it?" Thomas took a deep breath. "Lily asked me about babies last week, whether we might have one someday." The subject hinted at during their Christmas conversation, but not revisited since, hung between them in the spring evening air. "She asked me the same thing before Christmas," Olivia acknowledged. "I told her it wasn't something we'd discussed." "And now?" Thomas asked carefully. "Is it something you want to discuss?" Olivia considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "I think I do," she said softly. "The idea of a child who is part of both of us. It's something I've thought about." Relief and joy spread across Thomas's face. "Me too," he admitted. "More than I expected to, honestly. After Noah was born, Maria and I felt our family was complete. After she died, I couldn't imagine having more children." He took Olivia's hand. "But with you, I can imagine it clearly. A little one with your intelligence and kindness. And your patience and creativity," Olivia added, warmth spreading through her at the shared vision. "The children would have opinions, of course," Thomas said with a smile. "Especially Sophie and Lily." "They'd be wonderful with a baby," Olivia agreed. "Ethan might take some time to adjust, but he's nearly 17. He'll be thinking about college soon." The practical discussion of timing and logistics somehow made the possibility more real, more tangible. By the time they retired to bed that night, they had decided not to actively prevent a pregnancy, allowing nature to take its course while they continued building their life together. 2 months later, as May coaxed vibrant green from Vermont's landscape and wildflowers dotted the meadow behind the workshop, Olivia sat in the doctor's office in Burlington, holding the test results that confirmed what she had begun to suspect. A baby due in early January, a new year, a new life. She drove home with the windows down, the spring air filling the car with the scent of earth and possibility. The farmhouse came into view as she crested the final hill, its weathered boards and solid structure no longer appearing modest to her eyes, but instead perfect. A home built for generations, for growth, for love that expanded to include whoever needed it. Thomas was in the workshop when she arrived, the door open to catch the pleasant breeze. He looked up from the rocking chair he was crafting, sawdust clinging to his shirt, his face lighting with pleasure at the sight of her. "You're back early," he observed, setting down his tools. "Everything okay at the doctor?" Olivia nodded, unable to contain her smile. "Everything is perfect, actually. There's something we need to discuss." Understanding dawned in Thomas's eyes even before she spoke the words, his hands reaching for hers across the workbench, scattered with wood shavings and carving tools. "Thomas," she said softly, "we're going to have a baby." The joy that transformed. His features was answer enough, but he rounded the workbench and gathered her in his arms, lifting her slightly off the ground in his enthusiasm. "A baby," he repeated, his voice filled with wonder. "Our baby." Olivia laughed, tears of happiness, blurring her vision. "Yes, our baby, due in January." Thomas set her down gently, his hand moving instinctively to rest against her still flat stomach. "How do you feel? Are you okay? Do you need to sit down?" His sudden protectiveness was endearing, and Olivia placed her hand over his. "I'm fine," she assured him. "Tired and a little queasy in the mornings, but otherwise wonderful." "When should we tell the children?" Thomas asked, practical considerations already surfacing through his excitement. "Soon," Olivia decided. "Before the school year ends, it will give them time to adjust to the idea over the summer." That weekend, with James invited for a family dinner, they gathered everyone in the living room for the announcement. James had mellowed considerably in his attitude toward Olivia over the past months, particularly after she had helped Sophie create a photo album of Maria for his birthday, a gesture that acknowledged his sister's importance while affirming Olivia's understanding of her place in the family's history. "We have some news," Thomas began, his arm around Olivia's waist, both of them standing before the assembled family. "You're getting a dog?" Mason guessed immediately, his perpetual hope for a pet surfacing at any family announcement. "Not yet," Thomas laughed, "though that's still under consideration. Olivia and I are expecting a baby," he continued, his voice warm with joy. "You're all going to have a new brother or sister in January." The reactions were as varied as the children themselves. Noah bounced with excitement, already proclaiming himself a big brother for real. Lily's eyes widened with wonder, her earlier concerns apparently forgotten in the reality of the moment. Mason immediately began calculating what age the baby would be when he went to college. Sophie clasped her hands together, questions about nursery decorations already forming on her lips. Ethan, 17 and increasingly adult in his perspectives, studied Olivia's face carefully before offering a genuine smile. "That's great news," he said simply. "Congratulations." James, after a moment of visible processing, stood to shake Thomas's hand and offer Olivia a somewhat awkward but sincere embrace. "Maria would be happy," he said quietly, the highest compliment he could offer. She always wanted the children to have a complete family. The summer passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. Olivia's teaching position began in September, her growing pregnancy a source of delight for her third-grade students, who watched in fascination as their teacher's body changed with the passing months. Thomas converted the small room adjacent to their bedroom into a nursery, crafting a crib and changing table with his own hands, the love evident in every careful detail. The children participated in their own ways, Sophie photographing Olivia's changing profile each month, Lily painting woodland creatures on the nursery walls, Mason researching infant development and reporting facts at dinner, Noah practicing, holding a doll, so I'll be ready for the baby. And Ethan quietly ensuring the house remained stocked with the peculiar combinations of foods Olivia craved during her second trimester. As autumn painted the Vermont landscape in brilliant hues of red and gold, Thomas and Olivia celebrated their first wedding anniversary. There was no elaborate celebration, just a quiet dinner after the children were in bed, candles illuminating the kitchen table that had witnessed so much of their evolving relationship. 1 year, Thomas marveled, raising his glass of sparkling cider in deference to Olivia's pregnancy. It seems both longer and shorter somehow. A lifetime and a moment, Olivia agreed, her hand resting on her rounded belly where their child occasionally made its presence known with determined kicks. If someone had told me then what this year would bring, Thomas continued, his eyes warm in the candlelight, I wouldn't have believed them. That the practical arrangement I proposed would become the greatest joy of my life. That the escape I was seeking would lead me home, Olivia added softly. Thomas reached across the table to take her hand. I have something for you, he said, setting a small wooden box beside her plate. An anniversary gift. Inside lay a delicate silver charm bracelet. A single charm hung from the links, a tiny silver train. The beginning of our story, Thomas explained, fastening it around her wrist. I thought we could add a charm each year, moments that matter. Olivia touched the train charm gently, remembering that day at the Cedar Creek station, how uncertain and desperate she had felt, how impossible it would have seemed then that the stranger waiting on the platform would become her heart's home. It's perfect, she whispered, tears of gratitude blurring her vision. And I have something for you, too. She handed him a slender package wrapped in simple brown paper. Inside was a leather-bound journal, its cover tooled with an intricate tree design. For your sketches, Olivia explained, your furniture designs, but also, I thought, perhaps for letters to our child, things you want them to know someday. Thomas ran his fingers over the supple leather, visibly moved by the thought behind the gift. Letters to our child, he repeated. I like that very much. As Christmas approached, Olivia's due date grew nearer. The farmhouse was decorated for the holidays with pine boughs and red ribbons, the scent of baking cookies, a constant presence in the kitchen. The children's excitement was palpable, both for Christmas and for the baby's arrival, the best present ever, according to Noah. On the evening of December 23rd, as Thomas and the children decorated the Christmas tree, Olivia felt the first contractions begin. Quietly, not wanting to alarm the younger children, she beckoned Thomas to the kitchen. I think it's time, she said calmly, though her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Thomas's eyes widened. Now? But the doctor said early January. Apparently, our baby has other plans, Olivia replied with a small smile. That turned into a grimace as another contraction began. The carefully prepared plan was set in motion. James was called to stay with the children, bags were collected, and Thomas helped Olivia to the car, his movements efficient despite his evident nerves. It will be fine, Olivia assured him, though the contractions were intensifying rapidly. Women have been doing this forever. The drive to the hospital in Burlington seemed endless, the winter night dark around them as snow began to fall in, gentle flakes that caught in the headlights. By the time they arrived, Olivia's contractions were close together, her body preparing with determined efficiency to bring their child into the world. Everything happened more quickly than either had anticipated. There was barely time for the doctors to prepare before Olivia felt the overwhelming urge to push. Thomas remained by her side, his steady presence an anchor as she worked with her. Body's demands, his voice a constant reassurance in her ear. At 11:43 p.m. on December 23rd, their daughter entered the world with a powerful cry, her tiny fists clenched as if ready to take on life's challenges immediately. She was perfect, a dusting of dark hair, eyes that would later reveal themselves to be the same hazel as her mother's, and a determined chin that Thomas immediately recognized as matching his own. "She's beautiful," Thomas whispered, tears streaming unashamedly down his face as he held his newborn daughter for the first time. Perfect. Olivia watched them together, exhausted but filled with a joy so complete it seemed to radiate from her very being. This child, conceived in love, born into a family already waiting with open hearts, represented everything she had found in Cedar Creek: belonging, purpose, unconditional love. They named her Grace Maria Reynolds, honoring both the unexpected blessing of her existence and the woman whose absence had created the space for a new beginning. When the children arrived at the hospital the next morning, Christmas Eve, their reactions to their new sister varied from Noah's slightly disappointed, "She's smaller than I thought," to Sophie's tearful wonder, "She has Dad's chin and Olivia's nose." Ethan, nearly grown himself, held his tiny sister with surprising confidence. "Welcome to the family, Grace," he said softly. "It's a good one. Trust me." As Olivia watched her children, all 6 of them now, gathered around the hospital bed, she caught Thomas's eye across the room. His expression held everything they shared: the journey from strangers to family, the practical arrangement that had blossomed into love, the courage to begin again despite past wounds. Outside the window, snow continued to fall, transforming the world into a clean white landscape of possibility. Inside, in a hospital room filled with excitement and whispered promises, a family celebrated its newest member, not the first thread in their tapestry, but one woven with the same love that had brought a widower and a rejected bride together at a small-town train station just 15 months before. Their beginning had been unconventional, their path unexpected, but as Grace's tiny hand wrapped around Olivia's finger with surprising strength, she knew with absolute certainty that some journeys weren't about the destination at all, but about finding the people you were meant to travel with all along. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.